Lions sealed the series, but boy did Australia give them a scare. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Yeah, so really brilliant game of rugby this, very enjoyable, and I think it's really what, the Lions series needed, just in terms of getting, neutrals excited about it rather than just Lions fans or Wallabies fans. I think this is the game, if you're going to show somebody, for this entire Lions series so far, the game that you really want them to see what it's all about. This is the one to show them. But, first of all, I say there's already like my initial thoughts, shorter version of what we're going to talk about here up on the channel. It's about, I think, 9 minutes long or something, which is, very short for me. This one is going to be around kind of the 40 to 50 minute mark. At least that's normally, where it goes. I never really plan these videos other than having an outline of, the major events in the game and what stats and stuff I want to talk about. But, I can go on about points. So, you've been warned if you don't want to watch 40 odd minutes of me prattling on. But let's go through the game, and then we will talk about, some of the key things of the game and also some key performances as well. So we start with, Australia really started well right from the off, looking physical. Skelton and Valentini both brought, recovering from injury back into the team, giving them that oomph in the carry that they just didn't have in the first test, and really making a difference. Like, Skelton, 2-3 guys having to tackle every time, obviously leaving space elsewhere. And then you have him hitting up, and then, the next carrier to carry after, Valentini hitting up as well. And, they were bending the line, breaking the line. And then you also had like people like, Wilson, I thought was good. Alalatoa, good on the carry as well. And then because of the way those guys were playing, you saw Ikitau and Suilihi be more influential as well in that midfield, because there was more space there for them, and those guys have the skills to exploit it, and they did it pretty well, in the opening kind of phases of this game. But the Lions, they're really under pressure because of the that carrying ability of those guys, but also the fact that, they're getting in there, they're recycling the ball quickly. The Lions aren't able to slow it down, once they got those guys to ground, because they're scrambling to try and get, not worried about going after the ball. They're just trying to get the 3 guys that were, have tackled Skelton back into their defensive line. And because of that, then, they're coming offside and they get pinged for that. And it's a penalty. Lina pops it over, it was maybe like just outside the 22, almost straight on the post. So 3-0 Australia lead at that stage. Then Lions, you can see they're a little bit off because they're trying to work their way back into the game, go through phases, and Russell passes the ball directly into touch. And the way this Lions team is, like, Russell is kind of the heartbeat of them when they've got the ball. And, when he's doing stuff like that, it's not quite right for them. And, that was really coming from Australia, denying them any easy meters. Like the Lions last week, they were doing what Australia were doing at the start of this one. Big carriers, really, committing defenders, getting over the gain line. They weren't doing it in this, which meant that, the Lions are kind of scrambling at times. Look, the space wasn't there, and they were trying to make every little bit count. And, when you push it like that, you end up with passes like that. And, that's full credit to Australia, really. And, it's kind of role reversal from last week. And we talked about that in the build-up, that it probably was going to go like that you would have Australia starting the better of the teams, and, the Lions having impact off the bench, because that's where both teams had made the changes. You could see that the changes were going to be positive for both teams, and that's how they worked out. Then you have no clear release from Curry, and another penalty to Australia. It's 40 odd meters out, and Lina slots it for 6 points to 0. So, Australia they really are putting on that pressure, and they're getting rewarded for it as well. And it was good, I think, good options as well to take the penalty kicks rather than, I think Australia's of old would have been kicking to the corners, or certainly up the field, into the 22 and looking to go for tries and, and potentially coming away with nothing after having, a dominant start. Then the Lions smash Australia in the first scrum. They win a penalty, and the Lions pretty much on top in the scrum for the majority of the game. You have a round of handbags after that, and there was, like, early on there was a little bit of that tetchiness in it, and in the second half it kind of went out of the game. And I think a lot of it was just to do with how physical Australia were being at the start, and maybe the Lions just wanted, something to hit back with. They hit back in the scrum, and then, just that's the way it is, right? When both teams want to impose themselves, it's going to get to that line and go over it at times. But overall, I thought, it was, fairly well mannered, as you can have, like, for like 23 guys who were, like, on each team battering the crap out of each other for 80 minutes. But then from that penalty, Lions go up the line to about 10 meters out. They move it off the line out. Aki on a hard line, carries to within a few meters, recycle quickly. Conan goes over, but he's knocked on. But there's a penalty because the guy who actually forced the knock on was offside. So come back for that. Wallabies then holding the Lions out as they're battering away at the line, but they're offside again. And it's early in the game, but this still feels like a big moment that the Wallabies can prevent the Lions getting over at this stage and again get back into the stride again and just keep building that lead. They really could demoralize the Lions at this stage and really G themselves up as well. But Sheehan taps, and he's able to drive over, he actually dives over a tackle to score. And because it's in the act of scoring, it's allowed. If you had done it, let's say dived over and then gone on a little bit more to score, it would have been ruled out, because you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed, like, ball to tackle unless it's, you can dive in the act of scoring, and that's what he did. So then Russell then hits the outside of the post with the conversion, and you're thinking, like, that's one normally you'd get, and maybe those 2 points will come back to haunt the Lions later on. But 6 point to 5 at that stage. Then Potter has to go off injured, and he's replaced by McDermott. And McDermott, I think, does actually go straight in on the wing. And McDermott now, I have to say, he had a good game, but it severely, that early change severely limited what Australia could do in the second half in terms of switching things up to stop that momentum that the Lions are building, because they went for a 6-2 split, and there wasn't really anything else they could do in terms of bringing a new pitcher in terms of their backs once that had happened. Wallabies then back into 22, win a penalty as the Lions don't roll away. They kick that to the corner. The Lions halt them all as Australia look to drive over. Australia then move it inside. The Lions concede another penalty. They get a warning. The next one is going to go to the bin. Australia kick back to the corner. Maul goes forward initially. You have the thing where backs have come in as well to kind of help them, but the Lions do eventually halt it. Then Gordon goes, almost gets over. Freeman stops him, but he's actually offside, and that's important. We'll come back to that in a second. Australia play on. Eventually Slipper forces his way over. Conversion is missed. It's 13 points to 5. And then Freeman, for his part in stopping the try initially from an offside position, he goes to the bin. Lions then looking to go down the other end, but I thought Wright did really well. Collected a kick, evades a tackle his own 22. They worked it through a few phases, and then he kicks a really brilliant 50-22, and Australia again on the front foot, and they really did make the most of the yellow card period. In terms of, you see a lot of teams, to get that yellow card period, maybe to get that initial score, that was in the lead up to the yellow card, but then they don't get any more scores after that. And then it feels like a win to the opposition, but not in the case of Australia here. So back into 22, Skelton and Valentini, again, sucky in defenders. Alalatoa in there carrying well too. There's space on the right, and they've got numbers out there as well, but Gordon just snipes and over to score very well, kind of, just in terms of awareness from him. Conversions missed, and it is 18 points to 5. Then pretty much from the kickoff, Suilihi breaks up the middle, draws the cover, and then puts right over to score. And all that came from, again, they sucked in the Lions pack on the right hand side of the field, and it just meant that there were numbers and space for them in the middle there as well. But still, Suilihi did really well with a nice step to get through, and then just that, draw and pass, just textbook. Conversions missed, 23 points to 5. Australia in total command at this point of the game, and we're coming up to halftime, about only 8 or 9 minutes to go to the break at that stage, and I feel like if they can keep that momentum going, prevent the Lions from getting anything else, and maybe get, even under a penalty or two themselves before the break, it's a brilliant lead for them to take in. But Lions start to kind of work their way back into it. They attack off a scrum, good carry by Freeman, and this is when he's just back on the field as well after the yellow card period. Gets him deep into 22. James Gibson Park then, really good, quick thinking from him. Challenges the line. They're about 5 meters out. Finds Conan, and then Conan takes it right up. Finds Curry, and Curry a nice little step back inside and goes over to score. Conversions missed, 23 points to 10, but the Lions have a little bit of hope before the break. And then, we then have the Lions. They manage to hold Wilson up in the tackle, and it looks like it's going to be maybe a turnover scrum, but then there's an infringement from Australia just trying to get them to ground, and it's penalty. Russell then with just a monster kick down the line and puts the Lions back in position. Sheehan carries to a couple of meters out. The Lions, they've got space outside, and Gibson Park kind of shapes to go that way. You see the Wallabies defence then start folding over to that side as well, out to the short side, but then he comes back in field. Keenan, on a nice carry, finds Jones, who did really well in between two defenders, and double tackle on him, but manages to get over the line and also get the ball down. Doesn't get held up. That was brilliant work from him. Converted for 23 points to 17, and that was a halftime score. And what a half of rugby that was as well. Australia so quick out of the blocks, and then the Lions, that last kind of, what was it, like 6 or so minutes of the half, getting 2 tries, just completely changed the shape of halftime at that stage. In the second half then, Valentini doesn't come out for the second half. I think Alalatoa didn't come out either. And, big blows really for the Wallabies, because both of them were playing really well. Gleeson on for Valentini. I thought Gleeson did well, and he was decent off the bench in the first test too, but Valentini was just an absolute monster, and it was a big blow for them not having him. Keenan then does really well to save a 50-22. One of these ones where the ball is bouncing and he's running off the field, but manages to tap it, back in field before he goes off himself, and then comes back onto the field, collects the ball, and then really good clearance kick to bring them up to halfway as well. Sometimes with things like that, they go horribly wrong. Maybe tap it back in field and end up knocking it on, or a guy gets there and nicks the ball off you and scores a try. But he did excellently there, I think. Then Australia, they're keeping the Lions on the back foot, trying to peg them in their own half. Skelton now, though, he goes off for Australia, and you really were thinking that's going to have an impact on them, because he was such a focal point for them, in terms of their attack. And now he's gone, are they going to be able to, you felt like Australia had to be keeping that score line moving, and they do shortly afterwards as well, because they get a penalty. Aki holding onto the ball. Referee, I'm pretty sure referee told him twice, hands off. And I don't know whether he couldn't hear or like he was just taking a chance, but he's locked on the ball and he's not letting go. So obvious penalty. Nina then from the team makes it 26 points, 17. But you did feel that Australia had to keep that going. They couldn't let the Lions get more, more momentum coming back. And that's always the thing with games like this, right? Is when you have that kind of lead at halftime, where it's kind of one score game, and you get an earliest score in the second half, a penalty or whatever, you still know in the last 20 minutes you've got to add on a couple of penalties or a try to really make it so that if the opposition are scoring, they're only really cancelling out the points that you've added on. That's what you want. You want to keep that margin, but they weren't really able to do it in the game, as the Lions were just kind of wrestling the momentum away from them. Then Australia, they managed to break down the right. They go inside. They got men outside as well. There's one of these ones where if they can move it quickly enough and find them, potentially it's a score. But then Curry just works his way back, puts in a great tackle, and then forces a knock on as well. Just brilliant intervention from him. Again, for a guy who so many people were saying shouldn't be anywhere near the test team because there's other players on the tour playing better than him, etc. Just the impact the guy had in both tests, absolutely crucial. Next then, the Lions, they're starting to get a bit of, go forward themselves. Aki goes on the burst. Genge off the bench with a brilliant carry. I did say in the build-up, I felt he would have an impact because he's that type of player, right? If you take him from the starting team and put him on the bench, he's just thinking about absolutely smashing it up when he comes on. And that's what he did. And that's why, for me, if, let's say the Lions had lost this and we go into the third test, I'd leave him on the bench because you're going to get that impact from him again. Whereas when you put it the other way around, I don't think Porter gives as much. He can, but not necessarily giving as much off the bench. But I think you get more from Porter starting as well. But now, obviously, the series is won. I think Genge probably will get to start, and deservedly so as well, in the final test. But yeah, he gets them into 22. They then go wide, low, strong carry, fends, and then one of these out the back of the hand passes to Byrne, and then Byrne, like three players trying to stop him getting over, but he manages to get over in that corner, get the ball down, and that's converted with 26 points to 24. Lions just 2 points back, but they are running out of time at this stage. Itoje then over the ball, wins a penalty on halfway. I think, I was wondering, would they go maybe for a long range penalty or whatever, but no, they wanted to get closer and just make sure, if they're going to be taking points to win the game, that it's got to be more kind of certain, I think. So, and it wasn't late enough in the game either for it to be a last ditch kind of effort kick where you would kind of consider it, So, and then Russell absolutely pinpoint with the kick to the corner. Brilliant from him. Like the first half, as I said, we saw little wobbles from him. Second half, though, absolutely immense. Then Tizzano, gets over the ball. The Lions trying to drive over, but he gets over the ball, wins a penalty. I think it was James Ryan was on the carry there, and just great defence from Australia at that point. And you feel like things like that, if they're going to win that game, it's moments like that are going to win it for them. And it wasn't for lack of effort on their part, that they didn't get the win in this either. I don't think anyone can kind of disparage them in terms of that. Their effort was there. It was just one of those games where, tiny margin, and it fell in favour of the Lions. Then we have Kinghorn makes a break for the Lions. Genge carrying well again into the 22. Then Stewart gets pinged, just one of these stupid ones where he goes to ground and just so obvious that he's rolled again. And, it's a penalty to the Wallabies at that stage. I'm thinking, oh, that was a stupid thing to do. But sometimes you do it and you get away with it, right? And then it gives quick ball, it's moved, and somebody gets over to score a try, and nobody's going to be like on his back, if that's the scenario. But unfortunately, it wasn't. Lions then, they turned the ball over in the maul from the resulting line out, and that was a big thing. And then, I thought they talked about in commentary as well. Australia very, very smart in the scrum. They didn't want to give away a penalty, so it looked like they purposely engaged early just to give away a free kick. So the Lions had to run the ball, and because of rule changes, can't opt for another scrum. So the Lions then looking to get into the 22, but Australia really defending stoutly, and it took a lot of effort for them to get into it. But they do get back into that 22. They work it up to 5 meters out. Russell, you can see he's thinking about maybe going for a drop goal, but they decide to move it wide. Keenan then just backs himself in the 1-on-1 against Iki Tau and gets over the score. And Keenan, he's not a flash player, but in situations like that, he'll back himself, and he's got just that little bit of acceleration, that you're maybe not expecting. And I think that kind of caught Iki Tau off balance a little bit, and he couldn't set himself properly for the tackle. So over he goes to score, and we're thinking, okay, that's the winning try of the game. But then we hear there's the TMO check. We hear the Australians saying something to the referee as well. So they go to the TMO. And then we hear, it's a possible dangerous clear out on Tisano in the build up to that score. We have a look at the replay. You can't really see that there's head contact there. It's one of those ones where I think if you're an absolute diehard Wallaby fan, right? And I'm not bagging on the Wallabies here, because let's reverse it, right, and change the scenario to it's the Australians attacking and clearing out a Lions player. It'd be the same thing if you were an absolute diehard, but not just diehard, one-eyed fan. For you're gonna find something in there that's wrong. It's one of those ones where you can freeze frame maybe where there might have been a head contact, but it just looks like two guys have arrived at the ruck at the same time, right? And Morgan kind of catches Tisano kind of on the top of his back is what I saw there. And that's what the officials said as well. There was a clear wrap, no foul play, so the try stands. But again, because it's the winning try from the series, there are going to be people who will say, that it should have been ruled out, etc. But you're always going to get stuff like that, in moments like this. Then Russell, he allows the clock to tick into the red before attempting the conversion. He misses that, but nobody cares because the game has just been won by them at the death anyway, and it's 29 points to 26 is the full-time score. Okay, so as said, both teams really good performances, and kind of the flip of the first test where it was Australia starting strong and then the Lions having to come back and get there. They got there in the end, whereas Australia didn't in the first test. And it was that, for me, it was that period coming up to half time where they got those scores that, gave them, that, I think, belief really that it was possible to do. I think if Australia had maintained that cushion of, 18 points going into half time, might have been a completely different story in the second half. But let's have a look at the stats, and then we'll talk about individual players as well. So, first up, it was 5 tries to 3 in favour of the Lions. So it's good to see that, because there have been, certainly in the past and certainly in Australia, criticism of the Lions when they've won tests where maybe, they're the ones kicking the penalties and Australia have outscored them 3 tries to 1 or something like that. They've got a bit of a stick for that, but 5 tries is pretty decent in a test, at this level as well. So very good for them. Australia the better kicking from the tee, 67% to 40. It turned out, that really didn't come down to missed kicks, for either team, because both, missed conversions, etc. for, on tries. So didn't really overall have an impact. Then on to, possession. So 55% to 45 to Australia overall. It doesn't really tell the full story though. If we look at it even half by half, doesn't tell it so much, because like first half, 63% to 37 in favour of Australia. Second half, 52 to 48 in favour of the Lions. So you can see the Lions definitely had a switch around there. But for me, the switch around was probably from about 25, 30 minutes, to the last 50 minutes, the Lions were on top, in terms of possession and territory as well. Like territory, like first half was 51 to 49 and second half 55 to 45, in favor of the Lions. So that switched, and then overall 52 to 48 in favor of the Lions. But in the first kind of 20, 25 minutes of the game, Australia had 70% of possession and about as much territory as well. So it was that, final kind of, not even 10 minutes, 8, 9 minutes before half time. And then the second half where the Lions really turned things around, with that regard. Clean breaks then, 9 for Australia, 4 for, the Lions. And you could see Australia really did kind of creating space, identifying space, and then using space. They did it really well in this game, and much better than they did in the first test. And again, you've got to give credit to the forwards, especially the ones who came back into the pack, to really getting them over the gain line, committing defenders, and creating that space elsewhere on the field as well. Defenders beaten then 39 to 23 in favour of Australia. So it means in terms of conversion rate, Australia about 1 and 4 in terms of defenders beaten to clean breaks, and then the Lions, it was about 1 and 6. 23 defenders beaten for 4 clean breaks. Offloads then 2 for Australia, 7 for the Lions. There were some decent offloads in the build up to Lions tries, especially that low one out the back of his hand to Byrne for his try. Rucks then, both teams going at 97%, and you could see as well with Australia not as aggressive at the breakdown as they were in the first test, but part of that was the fact that they had so much of the ball that they didn't have as many opportunities to go after the Lions ball. The Lions didn't have those long periods of possession in the first half that they did, in the first test. The second half then, it was fairly even as well. Jack Morgan come on, trying to be competitive at the breakdown, but it was one of those, one of those games is where the interpretation of the breakdown kind of sided with the team in possession as well. We saw more kind of warnings and penalties given for players not releasing clearly and going off the ball when the referee felt there should have been a contest instead, or that kind of stuff. So and again, it's fine margins, right? You just kind of get your judgment right on that. Mauls then, Australia 2 out of 4, and the Lions 1 from 1. Turnovers conceded then 9 from Australia, 14 for the Lions. And the Lions, the fact that they had far more turnovers as well, that period right at the end where they were going for that final score, they didn't have penalty advantage, so they didn't have that in the back pocket. They had to be completely accurate because they were giving up turnovers, but also Australia were turning the ball over as well. The likes of Tizzano and Tizzano and Mac Wright, etc., getting in there, winning possession for Australia, but they were able to go on from there. Then set piece scrums, 5 from 6 for Australia for 83%, and 6 from 8 for Lions for 75%. But no doubt the Lions were absolutely on top in the scrum, and they were the ones that were winning penalties. There were a few I felt where having said that, though, where scrums went down and Australia could have maybe been rewarded by a different referee, but again, you can only play the officials that are there on the day, and another referee might have given the Lions more penalties in the scrum, because there were times when the scrum had collapsed, but the referee just wanted the ball out. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, really. Lineouts then, 19 from 19 from Australia and 9 from 9 for the Lions. We didn't see a lot of competing. The teams did put jumpers up, but it felt like on both sides, the running of the lineout was much better than the first test, and they were able to kind of, make the opposition jump in the wrong position, that kind of thing. So, much cleaner ball for both teams. Then, in terms of the, kick pass run. So meters run 400 for Australia to 378 for the Lions. So again, just showing that role reversal, because the Lions ran far more meters than Australia, did than Australia in the first test. So much closer, and Australia edging it this time. And then kicks from hand, 20 each. I thought Australia were getting a good change out of their kicking game in the first half, but then the second half, then not doing as much, and the Lions started to get a lot more accurate with theirs. I thought both Russell and Gibson Park were a little bit off in the first half in terms of their kicking, but in the second half they were just right on point. And then passes 172 to 127. So it means that the Wallabies making about 2.5 meters, for each of their passes. 134 runs, so about 3 meters per run for them. And then the Lions, 127 passes, so about 3 meters per pass, and then 96 runs, so round about not 4 meters per run for them. So the Lions, even though Australia were, like, just in terms of your flash memory, think of the game, you would think Australia are the ones that were always making the gain line, but it was actually the Lions made, for each run at least, were making more meters, but Australia more overall. Okay, next then, we're going to look at the defense. So Australia at 84%, which is really good for a test match. Lions 82, a little bit lower down and lower than the first test as well. But again, it's credit to Australia, because they were sucking those defenders in with the big carriers. It meant that there were more chances to basically put pressure on the Lions in terms of numbers and also space as well, and created those opportunities for missed tackles. Then, discipline cards. There was that one yellow card to Freeman, and then one free kick that Australia gave away, as I said, in the scrum in order to avoid potentially giving away a penalty. Then penalties conceded 8 for Australia, 9 for the Lions. So both teams pretty good discipline-wise, because you always say keep it in single figures and you're doing well. The Lions did have that kind of sequence of penalties given away that ended up with the yellow card to Freeman. Okay, next then we're going to look at individual players, for the Lions, and we'll highlight some for Australia as well. So let me pull those up. So first of all, on the Australian team, Tom Wright certainly far more involved in the first than in the first test. Like, got himself on the try, got himself a try, but also really good just in terms of his all-around play. I thought it was really good from him, and Jorgensen was brilliant in the first test. wasn't as maybe prominent in this one, but I don't think it was a case of it wasn't a huge drop off in his performance. It was just that the players around him, I think, stepped up as well, and he didn't stand up out as much just because he was playing in a backline that was overall playing much better. But Wright, 8 runs for 102 meters. he only made 1 out of 4 tackles. So, so defensively, a bit of a liability for his team. Jorgensen then, 42 meters from 7 runs, 7 from 8 tackles. So decent on both sides of the ball. Sui Lee, much better. This one, 8 runs for 30 meters, 8 from 11 tackles, but it was that like step and just being able to glide in position, and then just make sure that he absolutely did a textbook in terms of that draw, and then the pass as well, for that try. So brilliant from him. Len Ikitau then, 14 runs for 29 meters, 8 from 10 tackles. And, unfortunately for him, he was the one kind of got stood up a little bit by Keenan and then couldn't recover, when Keenan went over for that winning score. Harry Potter, injured fairly early in the game. So, no runs for no meters and no tackles either for him. Tom Liner, much better than the first, test, both of the halfbacks. 5 runs for 4 meters, 8 from 8 tackles. Kicked really well for his team and put them in good positions. And I think, his forwards would be fairly happy with his performance overall. Jake Gordon as well, absolute standout, I think, for the Wallabies. Got himself a try, 5 runs, 38 meters, 7 from 8 tackles. Just so quick. Great awareness, of where that space was as well. And yeah, much, much better from the first test. James Slipper got on the scoreboard as well with a try. 7 runs for 8 meters, 8 from 9 tackles. Tried to get parity for Australia in that, scrum. Didn't quite work out for them, but it wasn't a total disaster at the same time, and really good around the park too. Then Dave Parecki, who came in at hooker, line-out went absolutely flawlessly, 19 from 19, so he can't say, you got to give him credit for that. 12 meters from 6 runs, 7 from 8 tackles, sorry. Then Alan Alatoa, again, I think a big miss, the fact that he didn't come out for the second half. 5 runs for 1 meter doesn't sound all that great, but again, it was hard to put him to ground. And it was just the fact that you had the threat of him, Skelton and Valentini all back to back to back. The lines were just running out of players to tackle them. 2 from 2 tackles from him as well. Then Nick Frost in that end room beside Skelton. 14 meters from 9 runs, 11 from 12 tackles. A really decent performance from him, especially in the line-out as well. A lot of takes from him. Will Skelton then, 12 meters from 9 runs. Again, doesn't sound very impressive, but it's the fact that they didn't want him kind of just barreling on, right? So 3 guys in to tackle him, to stop him getting, making 3 meters into 6 meters. But that meant 2 extra players for Australia, up on their feet, and potentially an overlap somewhere. 6 from 6 tackles from him as well. And again, a big miss when he went off. This guy as well, Rob Valentini, 28 meters from 9 runs, so averaging about 3 meters per carry, which for a forward carrying into traffic is really, really good. 2 from 4 tackles, and a big miss when he went off. Then Fraser McWright, 10 meters from 5 runs, 7 from 7 tackles. Entire back row I thought was really good. Then Harry Wilson, one of the real standouts last week, 70 meters from 13 runs, 7 from 10 tackles. Not as good as he was last week, but still, a decent performance. And then the replacements, we won't go through them all, but replacements not having as big an impact as the first test, but players who kind of stood out to me, Gleason, having to come on for Valentini, I thought he did well. Tizzano really does look like a player who could, be on everybody's lips, if he can just keep that consistency going. And then Tate McDermott having to come onto the wing as well. I thought he did really well. Onto the lines then, so we go through their team as well. So start with Hugo Keenan. Obviously, got that try to clinch the series for them. But overall, I thought he was pretty good. There were some errors from him, not like a flawless performance. He did kind of knock on, I think, in the contest, up in the air. But 49 meters from 8 runs is decent. 2 from 4 tackles, not great, especially when he kind of prides himself on his defense at fullback as well. But overall, a good performance from him. Freeman, again, just not looking great, honestly. And I honestly believe if Darcy Graham hadn't got injured in that game on Tuesday, that Freeman might have been sitting in the stands for this one. But still, 62 meters from 6 runs, did get that yellow card. But the yellow card, yes, he deserved the yellow card. There's no doubt about that. But he just happened to be the guy that gave away the penalty in the sequence where the next guy was going to the bin. So, there were 3 or 4 other players who gave away penalties in that sequence as well. 5 from 5 tackles, decent. Again, not brilliant in the air though. I think he was more competitive certainly than the first test, but still not getting up there and kind of, stamping his name on that ball. And it'd be interesting to see, now with the third test coming, whether he's going to be retained or if somebody else is going to get a go. I'd imagine Lions are going to make a lot of changes just to give players, a test run out. Then, Hugh Jones, good in the centres. He did drop a couple of balls, but took his try well and, still think he's a very talented player. Yeah, he got his try, 29 meters from 4 runs, 5 from 6 tackles, and other than the couple of mistakes, pretty good overall as well. Bundy Aki, kind of similar from him as well. Couple of errors from him, especially giving away that penalty when he was told by the referee to take his hands off a couple of times. But still 20 meters from 6 runs, 10 from 14 tackles, and when the Lions were kind of finding it hard to, commit defenders and just go forward, I think he really did carry into traffic very well. James Lowe then, 18 meters, 6 runs, 4 from 7 tackles, not great. I saw it a few times where, especially in the first half, Australia had sucked players in the centre, and then they had numbers out wide, and Lowe was just shooting up, trying to catch the guy as he received the pass, and Jorgensen was just a little bit too quick in terms of being able to put a little bit of footwork on and make him miss those tackles, and giving kind of a little bit too much easy access, I think, to Australia down on the wing. Now the scramble was decent to cover those, but still it could have turned out worse. But overall, Lowe did really well for his, to build up to Burns' try as well, so didn't get on the score sheet himself, but his ability to kind of facilitate and be a bit of a playmaker as well from wing certainly helped out. Then Finn Russell, playmaker in chief, 6 meters from 5 runs, kind of what you expect from a 10, right? They're unless it's Marcus Smith or someone of that ilk, they're not going to be, getting double figures in their meters kind of thing. 9 from 11 tackles, really good in defence. Kicking it from the tee a little bit off, but that was for both teams anyway. So it didn't have a massive impact. Again, first half, maybe a touch off in terms of just kind of forcing passes a little bit, but then second half, you can see very calm, like that build up to the score for Keenan as well. Maybe another 10 would drop into the pocket and had a couple of chances to drop goal, but then Australia do get a restart if that happens. But I thought he kind of kept his cool well. He knew that option was there, but he backed his ability to keep that, keep the move going as well, and he made the right decision as well. So I think showed a good maturity there. Obviously, it's one of these things though where if the Lions had lost the test, let's say Keenan knocks on and that's it, like you know, Australia managed to get it in and out of the scrum and off the field and they win, then people are maybe questioning, well, why didn't Russell drop into the pocket right? It's kind of sliding doors, as it were, with stuff like that. James Gibson Park then, really good in terms of just keeping that ball moving, especially when the Lions were trying to build that momentum, in those final kind of 10 minutes of the first half. 23 meters from 5 runs, having that ability to snipe as well, just keeping the defense honest. And 5 from 10 tackles, not brilliant defensively, but still tried to put himself about a decent performance. Andrew Porter then, the scrum went really well, which normally for him, if the scrum is going well, the rest of his game is going well. I don't know on the carry, were not great. And you can see actually 2 runs for net 0 meters. So not great on that. Again, certainly much better off the bench, but set piece Porter was absolutely on top. 16 from 19 tackles as well. So really put himself about in defense. Dan Sheehan then, again, not at his absolute best in this one, but he did get a try, at a very crucial time in the game. 14 meters from 8 runs. Wasn't popping up on the wings as much as we saw, as we're used to seeing him, but he was there. He was doing his fundamentals, doing his basics, getting all that right. And that's, again, something that he's improved so much in his game. 12 from 16 tackles. The, line-out went like a dream, and he was part of that dominant front row as well in the scrum. Tyke Furlong, hands a little bit off in this one still. Feels like, maybe the fitness has to come a little bit more for us to see that kind of, 10 with 3 on his back kind of performance we see from before. Carey didn't have a lot of impact either, but 10 from level tackles, and again, absolutely dominant in the scrum. Maro Itoje, wasn't great in the first half, but the second half then I felt like he really did start to prove why he's the captain of this team, getting in there, at that breakdown, winning turnovers, being disruptive, winning penalties as well, and just showing I think he really is kind of a leader by action rather than kind of, saying something inspirational and geeing the guys up. He just produces moments that really gets everybody fired up, and he did that in that second half. 4 meters from 2 runs, 20 from 21 tackles, only 1 missed tackle out of 21. Cannot knock that at all. Yeah, and overall, again, definitely Lions pack for the first 30 minutes were the second best on the field, but last 50 minutes, he was one of the ones that really did raise his game. Ollie Chesham, we didn't see the impact that Joe McCarthy, had in the first test from him, but maybe it's a bit, how would you put it? I think McCarthy kind of reached one of those levels where it was just a very special performance from him in the first test that Chesham wasn't going to get there anyway, especially what we knew about how Australia were changing things for it anyway. But decent overall, 8 meters from 3 runs, 13 from 17 tackles, and part of a line out that went fairly well on their own ball as well. Ty Byrne, not the man of the match performance that he put in the first test, but certainly pretty damn good as well. Got himself a try there, that got the Lions in a position to potentially go for the win, and they did. 34 meters from 11 runs is decent. Again, averaging 3 meters per carry for that many carries is fairly impressive. 12 from 14 tackles. Again, we didn't see that impact at the breakdown that we saw in the first test, but it was one of those games where you're actually playing with fire, really going after the ball too much at the breakdown. So maybe a good thing that he wasn't doing that. Tom Curry then, another brilliant performance from him. He got a try. He gets 7 meters from 1 run. So that 1 run was the try that he scored. 15 from 16 tackles, and a real menace as well. when it was on to kind of slow the ball down or compete, he seemed to be the one that really picked his moments well. Jack Conan then, again, just giving the Lions something off the back of the scrum, and also just with his carries in general as well. 27 meters from 7 runs, 24 from 27 tackles, a solid performance from him. And then as well, just involved in the build-up to tries as well. The bench then, I thought Kelleher was certainly better than the first test. I thought Ellis Genge, for me, it certainly in the forwards was the best of the impact from the bench. Will Stewart, not as good as he was, in the first test. I thought he was one of the ones that kind of stood out in that first test, but maybe a little bit overshadowed by others that came on, and maybe the view kind of a little skewed just because he did that role as well. James Ryan, never flashed, but he come on and he really hit rucks and made the Lions ball a bit more secure. Jack Morgan, lively when he come on. I thought he was good. Alex Mitchell didn't get on the pitch. He almost got on the pitch at the end because Bundy Aki looked like he had cramp, and they were obviously thinking that, well, if they have to put somebody on, he was the only one left, so he would have had to come on, but they kept him in reserve. Owen Farrell come on, and bet there would be people who didn't like that, but he was fairly decent when he come on, and especially kind of helped in terms of the Lions just getting that shape back into the back line as well. And then Blair Kinghorn, I thought he was decent when he come on as well. 26 meters from 2 runs from him. Kind of maybe, in terms of injury, unlucky that he's not the guy that's had 15 on his back for the first 2 tests, but still, showed his class, I think, when he come on. Okay, so that is that in terms of all of the stats and stuff from the game. Again, it was fine margins between these two teams, and people who said that the Lions were going to walk it, etc. beforehand. Yes, it could still work out that the Lions are going to win 3-0, and in a few months' time or next year or whatever, people aren't going to remember the fact that it was fairly close. We don't know what's going to happen in the third test, right? But it was fairly close in the first 2 tests where the test series was on the line, and Australia almost won this as well. So there will be people who will disparage Australia because of it, because they've lost the series with a game to go, etc. But for me, given where Australia have been in the last few years, I think Schmidt has done a really good job of kind of restoring a bit of pride for Australia. For them to win the series was an absolute really, really tough ask for any coach, I think. But I think he's put a kind of a roadmap there in terms of Australia just rebuilding themselves back into a team that can be one of the best in the world and be competitive. They're not anywhere near there yet, but you can see that there is at least a pathway for them there. Whereas in recent years, we're thinking they just seem to be going backwards all the time. So fair play to him and to the players for that. They're obviously only playing for pride in the third test, but I'd still expect a big performance from them, especially because I think the Lions are going to make a lot of changes. There will be that kind of thing of the Lions. I think the Lions will do 2 things in the build up to the second test. First of all, they will make a lot of changes, and players who are in the wider squad, and certainly players who've been close to being in the 23 for these tests anyway, will get a run out. But I think players as well who were initially in the squad and haven't featured, so the likes of maybe like a Van der Fleer or Van der Merwe, those type of players, I think you're going to see them possibly in the third test. I'm not too sure about the players who were kind of called up just as injury cover. I think some of them were sent home anyway. but you can't see the Wales squad getting used. So I think that's the first thing that they'll do. And the second thing that they'll do is there's going to be a lot of talk about how they're focused now on winning the series 3-0, and that's going to be the messaging through the week, is that, Australia are a fantastic team and we want to finish off with a 3-0 win, but they're not going to be picking their strongest team for it at the same time. So for me, that's kind of mixed messaging, right? But I think that's what you're going to hear over the week. And whether they can do that or not, a lot of them, it's kind of weird to say that they won't care, but in terms of if they lose that game, obviously they're going to care that they've lost the last, lost the final test and they didn't get a clean sweep of 3-0. But at the same time, they've won the series, and that's what they're going to be remembered for. That's what they're going to be happy about as well. So, but I hope that we get a game approaching this quality for that final test, because I think that this series deserves it. I think Australia deserve it as well, and the Australian public. This series seems at least has had a massive impact in Australia in terms of just the public interest in rugby as well, where it's there's so many other sports, AFL, league, cricket, soccer, etc., that have been grabbing the headlines over recent years as well. So a resurgence in rugby there would be, not just good for Australia, but good for rugby in general around the world as well. And for me, I think that's an important thing, that anytime where we see teams who traditionally have been some of the stronger teams in rugby on the test stage going through bad patches, personally I think it's bad for rugby, and I'm thinking of Australia, but also Wales as well, where it's not, to me, it's not about where teams are ranked in the world or not. It's about, like, if let's say you're ranked number 9 in the world and you're actually a really good team, and it just so happens that the 8 teams above you are just, ranging from exceptionally good to just out of this world, then being 9th in the world is fair where you are, if you know what I mean. Where, and that's fine. But if you're down there where, Australia have been in recent years and where Wales are now, like outside the top 10, just because you've just been absolutely abject for a long period of time, I think that's something very different as well. So it'd be good to see Australia coming back and hopefully Wales coming back as well. But in a scenario where other teams are improving too, rather than they're coming back because other teams are dropping off. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, I've enjoyed the series. As I said, it's been a few line series now since I've been properly invested in it. So I've really enjoyed it. And I'm just hoping now that this third test as well is a really good sign off for it. And, whether you're an Aussie fan, a Lions fan, or just a neutral watching the series as well, hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed your rugby as well. We've had some new people to the channel during the series as well, so welcome to those people. And just thank you to the people who've been here for the long haul, and the people who are new as well. Just thank you for all the support. Really appreciate it. I love seeing people's comments. It really helps the channel, if you hit that thumbs up, that kind of stuff as well. But I'm always, humbled and just feel like I'm so privileged to be able to make these videos and have people actually watch them as well. So just a massive thank you to you guys. I know the series isn't done, but I'm sure some people maybe will switch off kind of for the third test because it's over as a contest. So it feels like a good time. I'll probably say it on the last video as well anyway. But yeah, it just feels like a good time just to say a massive thank you to everyone who's been watching recently. But that's it from me. Let me know what you think down in the comments.